Erev Tov, good evening, and Chag Sameach. I hope that you are enjoying this Shavuot holiday, and I'm very excited that you have chosen to study with us this evening through our pre-recorded learning sessions. I'm Rabbi Weiss of Jeshurun Congregation, and tonight we're going to study Making Your Own Heaven or Hell, based on the teachings of Rabbi Ha-Chayim of Volozhin in his work Nefesh Ha-Chayim, a very important Kabbalistic and Musar work. Rabbi Ha-Chayim of Volozhin was the disciple of the Vilna Gaon. And there is a study sheet for the session that I'm going to teach. If you'd like a copy of it, you can go to B'nai Yeshurun's website, go to About, then Clergy, find my profile page, and there you will find a link to a PDF that you could download to follow along as we study together. In his book Nefesh Ha-Chayim, Rabbi Ha-Chayim of Volozhin teaches the Kabbalah's understanding of the nature of the human soul and its relationship to the universe and to God, how they are connected and how they impact each other. And he teaches us in chapter 7, the first source on the sheet that you have before you, that the human being is considered to be the Nefesh or Neshama, the soul of all the worlds. When I say all the worlds, the Kabbalists believe that there are 4 layers of existence, 4 worlds that comprise the creation that God set in place. This world, our world, is called the world of Asiyah, the world of action. Above it is the world of Yetzirah, of formation. Above that, Bria, creation. Above that, Asilut, emanation. Above that level is God's pure, unending, infinite light and energy, God's Spirit. You don't have to remember those 4 worlds. It's not important. What is important is to know that Rabbi Ha-Chayim teaches us that our soul is the soul of all those worlds. And he says this does not mean a soul in the sense that a soul is literally placed and attached within a person's body. Rather, just as a person's soul activates the movement of the body's limbs, so too the tendencies of the powers and the higher worlds and the order of the heavenly chariot, that is, of the sfirot, the attributes that make up the divine, their rectification or tikkun, their destruction, God forbid, are all activated by the actions of man in the lowest world. That is, just as our soul causes us to move our limbs, to speak, to act, to do, so we, as the soul of the universe, cause all the celestial spheres to move. And as those spheres move, they move either into greater alignment, which allows God's light and spirit to flow more freely into our world, to bring us blessing and fill us with joy and with healing and with love, or we can push those celestial spheres out of alignment so that God's light does not flow into the world as freely as it should. And that brings about suffering in our world and is, for the Kabbalist, the ultimate source of evil. And Rabbi Ha-Chayim goes on to say that this is because man is composed of and constructed from the supernal and lower powers and worlds. He incorporates all of them. All of these celestial layers that make up existence. Therefore, man has been given the choice to direct himself on the worlds in whichever way he desires. We as human beings, we are the ones who are in control, says Rabbi Ha-Chayim, of how those celestial spheres move, how God's light comes into our world. And he brings a verse from Exodus when God says to Moses, tell the people of Israel, Ehayeh Asher Ehayeh sent you. That my name is Ehayeh Asher Ehayeh. I will be that which I will be. And he points to a midrash and says the meaning of that phrase, I will be as I will be, is, just as you are with me, says God, so too I will be with you. Just as you are with me, so too I will be with you. That is to say, if we approach God with joy, God reciprocates joy. If we approach God with love, God reciprocates love. If we show in our lives compassion, God brings compassion into our lives. as you are with me, so I will be with you. And then Rabbi Chaim brings a verse from Psalms. It's a verse that we're all very familiar with, from Psalm 121. Adonai shamrecha, Adonai tzilcha al yad yaminecha. The Lord is your guardian. He is your shadow at your right hand. And the word shadow is often translated as protection in many English versions of the book of Psalms. But the literal word is shadow. The Lord is your shadow at your right hand. And Rabbi Chaim comments on that saying, what is the meaning God is your shadow? He is like your shadow. Just as with your shadow, if you play with it, it plays with you. If you cry, it cries. If you show it an angry or a hopeful face, it similarly gives you the same. This, says Rabbi Chaim, is the way that God relates to us. God is like our shadow. When we, again, show God hopefulness, joy, love, compassion, mercy, when we show those qualities to other people and to our world, then God, like a shadow that follows along our movements, sends those same blessings back to us. And he quotes from the Zohar, which says, "Come and see, the lowest world stands to continually receive, and the supernal world, that is the highest of all the celestial worlds closest to the essence of God, only gives according to the way a person stands. If he stands with a shining face looking upwards from below, then for that reason he is enlightened from above. And if he stands in sadness, then he is given that same judgment in response." In this vein, the verse says from Psalms 100, "Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha," serve God with joy, for a person's joy draws upon him a separate supernal joy. So this is the first of two lessons I want to share with you this evening. If we want to receive God's blessings, we have to offer those blessings up because God mirrors them back to us. The second is a lesson that comes from later chapters in his work Nefesh Ha-Chayim, where Rabbi Chaim compares human beings to angels. And he says, an angel is certainly incomparably greater than a Jew in terms of his essence. The greatness of his holiness, the awesomeness of his perception, there is no comparison. However, says Rabbi Chaim, in one respect, man has a distinct, significant advantage over an angel, in that he can elevate and interconnect the worlds, powers, and lights with each other. No angel is capable of doing this at all. Angels, the Kabbalists believe, not only don't have free will, but they don't have the ability to move or to elevate the worlds around them. That's why the prophets described them as omdim, as standing. But human beings are described as holchim, as walking. We have the ability to elevate the celestial spheres and even the angels. We have the ability to align the world to cause God's light to flow, whereas the angels do not. Rabbi Chaim goes on to say, the three levels of a person's soul, Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama, are only enabled to raise and interconnect the worlds and themselves when they descend to this physical world of action and are manifest within a person's body. That is, the soul must be rooted in a human being in order to have the power to affect the heavens and to transform the world. And the Kabbalists believe that our soul is rooted inside of us, but that's like the heel of the foot. And from the heel of the foot, the leg extends upward to the body. In the same way, our soul is rooted in us, but the soul reaches up beyond us through all the celestial spheres to the highest levels of existence, where they unite with God's energy and blessing and love. And that's why we have this power to influence the worlds. Rabbi Chaim says, this is an idea represented by the vision of the ladder in Jacob's dream. And he quotes the Zohar, which in turn quotes Genesis. He breathed a living breath, soul into his nostrils, meaning Adam. The Zohar says regarding that, about which it says he dreamed and there was a ladder, meaning Jacob. The ladder is certainly his living soul, says the Zohar. It was through his ladder/soul that the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. That is, we enable the angels to ascend. And then Rabbi Ha-Chayim teaches what is to me the most beautiful lesson of all. He says, from the moment it enters into a person's thoughts to perform a mitzvah, to fulfill one of God's commandments, to do a good deed, immediately it makes an impression above, in his supernal source, in the root of God's light and spirit and energy. The impression above inevitably also arouses and draws down an enveloping light upon him from the supernal holiness, which assists him to complete the mitzvah. That is, the moment that it enters into your mind to do a mitzvah, you draw down the light of God, and it surrounds you, encompasses you, fills you. That light motivates you to carry out that mitzvah to completion. And then once the mitzvah is completed, that holiness and that light returns to its source. This, he says, is the concept of reward in the world to come, which is that a person's actual actions, which after the separation of the soul from the body, his soul ascends to enjoy and be sustained by the subtle shining of the holy lights, powers, and worlds, which have been added to and increased by his good deeds. In other words, Rabbi Chaim is saying that it's our good deeds, our performance of mitzvot, of commandments, of God's will, of acts of justice and kindness and mercy, which add to the world to come, which expand it. We create a section of the world to come. It's not that the world to come already exists and we earn our place in it. Rather, we create that world to come, which we will inhabit when we leave this world. It's the difference between moving into a house that's already there and building a house. Rabbi Chaim says we build the house. We create our own heaven. And he says, this is what Chazal, the rabbis of the Talmud, meant when they said, all Israel has a share in the world to come. They do not say, we have a share in the world to come, which would be ba olam haba, with a bet for in, as this would imply that the world to come already existed at the time of creation as an entity in its own right. And if a person would deserve to receive it, he would be rewarded by being given a part of it. However, in reality, says Rabbi Chaim, the world to come is generated by a person's actual actions. Think about that. The world to come is generated by your actions, whereby a person extends, adds to, and rectifies his own portion through his own deeds. Therefore, Chazal say that each individual Jew has the portion of holiness, light, and subtle shining that he himself created as a part of the world to come. And then Rabbi Chaim says the same is true in the other direction. The punishment of Gehinnom, he says, the punishment of hell, which in Judaism is understood not as a permanent state of damnation, but rather as a stage, a period of time during which we go through punishment and purification and cleansing of the soul before we enter heaven. He says, that too is something that we create through our deeds. The sin itself, he says, is the person's punishment. When a person sins, the damage and destruction, God forbid, makes an immediate impression above in his source. Suffering for our sins, he says, is not punishment or vengeance, God forbid, but rather it is the very act of sin which is the punishment in and of itself. For since creation, God has established the natural order of the behavior of the worlds, that they are dependent upon the level of arousal of a man's actions, whether good or bad, God forbid. that the action of each individual automatically impacts his source and his root. So there you have it. We come to synagogue and we pray that God should give us blessing in our life, that God should fill us with joy and health and well-being and prosperity. Rabbi Ha-Chayim says, you want all those good things? You want reward in this world and in the world to come? You make it happen. You have the power to make your own heaven or your own hell. And we live in that heaven or hell in this world, living with the consequences of our actions as they affect us and those around us, and we carry them into the afterlife. And Rabbi Ha-Chayim is saying to us, remember the power that you have. God is your shadow at your right hand. You have the ability to bring joy and blessing, harmony and peace to yourself, to those around you, to bring the world to redemption by the attitude that you bring and by the choices that you make. May our choices always be the ones that will bring us blessing and help us create our little place in Olam Haba. I wish you all a very joyous and celebratory Shavuot. Chag Sameach.